Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Lydia. Today we're going to be painting Beloved Bamboo. I'll go over the materials that you need to do the painting as well as list those materials down in the description box below. I'll also provide a photo of the finished painting on my Instagram account, Lydia Pangborn Art, for your reference. I'd like to thank all of you who have taken the time to subscribe to my channel, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so and hitting that like button. So grab your paints, your brushes, something to stay hydrated, and I'll meet you back at the easel. So the materials we're going to use today are going to be a 9 by 12 inch stretched and primed canvas. I haven't done anything to this canvas yet. We will be putting a little coat of water on it before we get started. Our palette today is going to be very simple. The acrylic paint colors I'm using are Quinacridone Magenta, Cadmium Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, and this is the green shade, Ivory Black, and this is just 2 little piles of Titanium White. The brushes I'm going to be using are a 1 inch flat brush, a 1/2 inch flat brush, and a small round brush. You're going to want to have a jar of water for rinsing your brushes, paper towel for drying your brushes or an old cloth, a mister bottle for keeping your paints damp, and you're going to want to have something to sketch with. This is just a piece of kids chalk. So this is going to be a minimalist style of painting, so there's not going to be a whole lot of busyness in the painting. I'm going to start with my bigger brush, so my 1 inch flat brush. I'm going to get it wet, just the bristles. And I'm actually going to wipe off the excess water, and I'm just going to go ahead and wet my canvas. And this is just going to help the paint that I put on blend a little better. You certainly could use a blending medium if you'd like. And I am going to go from a light to a dark. So I'm going to start with a very light pinkish color, and then I'm going to work my way down to a little bit darker. So I'm pushing my brush down into my Titanium White. And I'm just going to come over and I'm going to come with the corner of my brush and just get a little bit of my Quinacridone Magenta. I don't want too much to start with, and I'm just going to let this blend as I work down the canvas. And I'm making those long X strokes that I like to do when I'm blending. You can make circular motions if you like. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white and just come up and blend that white into where I'm working. And because my canvas has that water on it, it's just going to blend very nicely. And I want this very top part to be quite a bit light, so I don't want too much of that red, the Quinacridone Magenta in here yet. Now as I start to move down, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get less white, and I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the magenta. I still don't want too much, but I've got a little bit more, and I'm going to come below where I started and just start working that in. And I'm working down the canvas until I get quite a bit of that paint off of my brush. I'm going to go ahead and get these sides a little bit. And then I'm going to start to go where these two meet, and I'm just going to start to do those X strokes so that I can blend this a little better as I'm moving down. And then as I go down a little more, I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more white. I don't want too much white now, a little bit more red. So maybe about the same amount of red that I had before, but I'm also going to pick up just a drop of the blue. So I just want a little tiny bit. I got just a really tiny bit of that blue, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to work that down below and just blend that in. And if you feel like your canvas isn't covering, You certainly could do a second coat. And I'm going to go ahead and blend that all the way up and all the way back down. So once you get this covered, we're not going to need this bigger brush anymore. We're going to move to the 1/2 inch brush. So we're going to go ahead and get this brush cleaned out, and we're going to let this dry, and we'll come back for the next step. Okay, so now we're going to put our drawing in, and I just wanted to talk about the drawing a little bit because it's very simple, and you can adjust it if you wanted to do a bigger canvas and make this bigger, you can. I did it small on purpose, and I kept my bamboo small as well, just because I wanted it to be a nice, small, simple, sweet painting. So what I did is I came in from the bottom up about 2 inches and over about 2 inches. And I'm going to put a little dot there. Now I have this sketched in so I can kind of guide you along with it. Then I went over maybe about 1.5 inches and I put another little dot. And then when I came up, I wanted my pot to widen out just slightly. So I came in, so if I came in down here about 1.5 inches, I came in just maybe 1.25 inches over here. So I want it to be out, and I want it to come out from the bottom, taper out a little bit. And that's the same thing over here. Just want it to taper out just a little bit. And that's the great thing about drawing with chalk. You can erase it as you go. But once I had these 2 bottom dots, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little curve here. And then I'm going to go up and connect these 2 dots with a nice curved line as well. So it gives me that partial oval that I'm going to have. And then I can connect my top and bottom lines as they curve in. So I'm going to draw it straight down, curving in, straight down, and curving in. So it's just that simple. And then give it a little 3D effect. So you want to think of this as an oval. So if you're looking at something straight on that's a circle, it looks like this. But as you turn it, it flattens out into more of an oval shape. So I'm going to go ahead and create a little oval shape here. And we're going to put a little bit of grassiness down in here. And like I said, I wanted my bamboo to stay very small. If you have a bigger canvas and you want to make it bigger, feel free to do that. But I came down about 5 inches from the top in, and then I came in probably about 3 or 4 inches, and I made a little dot where I knew that my little bamboos were going to connect. And then I simply just drew a heart. And we've all probably drawn hearts before. And I made mine a little bit on the longer, skinny side, just like that look. And that way I can build my bamboo out from that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come out. And this is where you can decide how wide you want your bamboo to be. If you want it to be a little wider, you certainly could bring it out a little more. And just come out and curve it in, and then out and curve it in. So now you have your heart shape. And again, as you're painting, if you don't like your lines, you can always just brush it off and keep going with it. And then I'm going to bring a straight line down from there on each side. And then I'm going to have a line that splits the 2. So I have a line from the base of my heart down to the pot, base of the heart down to the pot on the other side, and a line that splits the 2. And then with bamboo, there are these little, just these little areas where the little growth comes out. And I have put like a little stem on one and decided to do just these little thin little leaves, and we'll do those in a little bit. And then maybe a little line there, a little line there. And this doesn't have to be symmetrical. It may not grow symmetrical. I am going to make this side the lighter side of my pot and this side the darker side of my pot. And just one quick thing I would like to say about my chalk is I do actually use, I'm not going to show the name brand of this chalk, but this is just your basic chalk that you can go to any department store and get your chalk. And it comes like this. I actually have this old pencil sharpener that I've had for a long time that fits my chalk down into it, and I can actually turn it and sharpen it to a point. And it's just a simple way to draw on your canvas. without having to worry about messing up your canvas. And you want to make sure before you start drawing on your canvas that your underpainting is dry. So this is all completely dry, and I did hit it with a blow dryer for a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and do our flat brush, our 1/2-inch flat brush, and get our pot filled in. So what you want to think about doing is you want, even if you want white, you don't want to start with the base color being white. Now, if you want this to be a terracotta pot, you certainly could do that by mixing up some orange and adding a little black into that, and or blue into it even, and just start working with it. I want this to have a more modern feel to it, so I'm going to make this just a plain, simple white pot. But when you want to do a white pot, you can't just start with the white. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to mix up a bit more of a darker purple than we made down here. So not too dark, but I am going to take some blue. I'm going to come up to my Quinacridone Magenta. And I'm going to see how dark that is by adding some white. I need a little bit more of my Quinacridone Magenta. And I'm going to add, you don't want to add too much black. This is Ivory Black, it's quite opaque. So I'm just going to get a really small corner dot on my brush, put that in and mix it in. And that way I have a color that's really in this nice bluish red color. I have a little bit more of that red, so it's kind of a purple color. And I'm going to add, so it's leaning purpley blue. I'm going to add some white to that, and you can see when you add white what you actually have, and I'm liking that. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more white so it's a little lighter. And when you have just a few colors that you're working with, so you've got your primary colors, the red, yellow, and blue, and then you've got your white and your black, you can actually start, this is a nice way doing a small simple painting like this to play around with color and mixing the colors, because it's not always as easy as you think it's going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start on this side. This is going to be my darker side, and see what that looks like. Now, if you want it to lean a little bit more purple, you can. I'm going to leave it like that because I like it having that blue in there. If you want a little more purple, you can add a little bit more of that red. And I'm just going to come down and just fill in my shape where my chalk is now. And it's just that simple. And again, this is just the base paint color of my pot. Now, as I come to the middle, I'm going to add a little bit more of the white. And I'm just going to continue. I'm working in I want to make sure I'm following the contour of what the pot would be. So you want to make sure that you're not necessarily doing up and down strokes unless you're adding a little blending. So if you want to take your finger and just blend that in, you can. And then when I get closer to this side of the painting, I'm going to add even more white. So I'm just coming above the mixture that I have and adding even more white over here. And I can start on this side and start bringing that in. And then you can take your finger, make sure you don't have any paint on your finger, and just start to blend that out. I want to follow this line down a little bit more. Okay, and you can already see that you're starting to get a shape of a pot. And then I'm going to take that same color that I just mixed, the lightest one, and I'm just going to start to make a little guideline for myself. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to have paint right on the chisel edge. So I'm going to get a little water right on the chisel edge of this brush, and we're going to do a little bit more work with our smaller brush, but I want to just get an idea of where I want the back part of my little pot to be. And we'll play with that a little bit more as we're working. So, and when you do this, you want it to mirror this shape, so it's more of an oval. But if you mess up, it's okay. We're going to have some grasses, and we're going to come back and be doing some more highlights, so it will make more sense as we move along. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this darker color, come back down to the same darker color, and I want to I'm not going to create a strong line back here. I'm just going to give the sense that this pot is sitting on something and there's a shadow being cast on this side. So I'm just going to start to just brush in a little bit of some brush strokes here. I'm going to add just a little bit more of my purple or Quinacridone Magenta. I'm going to add a little more Quinacridone Magenta, and I'm just going to keep I want to come right up to the edge and then just brush it out. And I want to make sure that it's very similar to the shape of my pot. So it's going to be a bit of a circle. And then I'm just going to start to blend that out a little bit. And if you want, again, you can take your finger, make sure there's no paint on it. And even if you want to, you can take your finger, get a little water on it, and just start working around the edges if you want to smooth those edges out. And it just makes for a nice, simple way to get your shadow in without having harsh brush strokes. And when we get our small round brush, we'll go back and just do a little bit more work on that. So we're going to rinse this brush out, and then we'll come back with our small round brush for the next step. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to fill in our bamboo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a darker green to start with, and we'll go in and lighten it as we go. So it's going to be mostly blue with a little hint of my cadmium yellow medium. So that gives me quite a dark green. And if I want it a little bit darker, remember green and red are across from each other on the color wheel. So I can bring in a little bit of that red and mix it in a little bit at a time to get it even more dark. And let's see what that looks like. So I'm using my small round brush. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to that, just to get a little bit more green. So I just added a little more yellow because I wanted a little bit more green than that. There we go, I'm liking that. Looking good. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around and I'm going to fill in all of my green. So every bit of the heart shape that I have there for the bamboo, I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. And this is a great time to look and see if you want to make any adjustments to how wide it is, or if you want to narrow your heart or widen your heart any. This is a great time to do that. And if as you're going along you feel like you went outside of a line, you can always take your smaller flat brush and go along, wet it, and just go along the edge, and that cleans that edge right up. You can wipe off any excess paint, dip it in your water again, and just go along and clean the edge right up. So when you're working in a smaller space, sometimes that may happen, but not to worry, we still have a few more layers to go. And once you get your heart filled in, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add just a little bit more yellow to this color that I'm working with. Still using my small round brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and just do these little short strokes, just filling in around where the base of my plant is, just to add a little bit of some grass areas. I'm going to come back to my darker area down here with that darker green and maybe work some of that in as well. And we're going to come back and detail that in just a little bit more as we go along. Now, these are just short strokes that are working more vertical, just to fill it in. There we go. And we're going to let that dry. So while I have this little bit of green on my brush, I'm going to go ahead up here and put my small little leaf parts that I want to have in here. And they're just these little leaves that come to a nice little point. I'll just go ahead and draw a little line out to where it would touch there. So I know I'm going to have like a little area of growth there. So I'm going to clean this brush out, and we're going to come back and do the rest of the base of our pot and work just a little bit more on our shadow, and then we'll come back and finish up our bamboo. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm taking my flat brush, and I'm working with these lighter blue colors that I mixed up earlier to do my pot with. And I've already started doing this a little bit. I realized I wasn't recording, but I'm just coming from the edge and brushing in with just a very thin wash on my brush. So it's just a very thin amount mixed with this bit of blue color. It's still not quite white. And I'm just pulling in just the way I did earlier. And my fingers are clean because I'm going to be doing a little blending with my finger. There we go. So I'm going to take my finger now, and I'm just going to start to blend that in right into the center there. And it's starting to look like it's more of a white pot than a purple pot now. But I have that purple blue color underneath. And just get that blended in. And as I move to the center now, I'll come down to that medium color that I had, and I'll have a little bit of white. I'm going to drop a little bit of water into that medium color. And I'm going to come to the center. A little bit more pigment in that. There we go. And I'm going to come to the center and just brush that all the way down. And then at the edge, just blend that out. So none of it is white. It's still got a little bit of the purplish blue in it. And then I'm going to come just to now get a little bit more white, pull it off to the side. And I'm going to come from this side, and this gives me an opportunity to shape up my pot a little bit if I feel like it was a little off. And I'm going to come down that line, straighten it up. And pull that in. And I'm moving with what I think would be the shape, the contour of my pot. And then take my finger and blend that out. So now you can see it looks more like a white pot, but you know that there's a base color under there. We're going to let that dry before we add any last bits of a highlight. And what I want to do is I want to take this same little paint mixture I have here, and it's very watered down, so I'm dripping a little bit more water in it. I'm going to add just a touch of my Quinacridone Magenta. Here we go. And I'm going to use this just a little bit, and I'm going to glaze over that shadow with it. And again, I'm taking my finger, I'm going to wet my finger a little more, get a little water on my finger, and just kind of come in. I'm just going to come in and blend it so it doesn't look like a harsh shadow. I'm going to go right up to my pot. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'll put a little bit of paint there and blend it it forward a little bit. I'm gonna add just a little bit more of that pinkish color in. There we go, and blend that out. And that just softens my shadow. I can go back in if I need to and pick up a little bit more of my quinacridone and just brush that in lightly back here and blend it up. Now I want this little area underneath my pot to be a little darker, so I still want to keep, I can come back down where I was working where it was darker with my blue and red mix. And I didn't rinse my brush off. I have a little bit of white in there. And I'm just gonna put like a little, just a little line under here. I want it to be a little darker than that, so I'm gonna pull in a little bit more of the blue, a little bit more of the purple. Just put a little line in there, and then I can blend that out as well. So it looks like it just settles my pot right in, and I can go back to the lighter color that I have. I still have quite a bit of that paint on my brush, and come around this side. And it looks like it's settling in a little bit more. There we go. I'll just blend that in. So it looks like it's sitting on something. And I'm gonna take my finger again, make sure my finger is clean, and you can use your small round brush for this if you like, and just blend right along the edge of that pot so everything looks connected. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this purple out of the same brush. And once I have all of that paint out of my brush, I wanna put my little highlights on my pot. Those little final highlights. So I've got just titanium white, and I might can put just a drop of each of these, the blue and the purple, but there's not gonna be a whole lot in it at all. It's gonna be mostly white. And then I can come back over here, hit along this side. So it's that final little white touch. I always like to think in threes, so I've got 3 different little layers on it. And you can even make one little straight down mark. So that's gonna be it. That's all I'm gonna do with the shadow in the pot. That's done. So now let's go back to our small round brush. I'm gonna rinse this brush out and we'll come back and get our bamboo finished. So I've got my fingers cleaned off because I'm probably gonna be doing a little bit more blending. And I need to start by knowing where I'm gonna put my little areas where my bamboo has the little, they're like the little, I'm not sure what to call them, but they're the little areas where things grow from. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to mix up, I'm coming back over to this little area that's got a little bit more yellow than blue in it, but I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to that. So this is gonna brighten it up. And I'm gonna come here and I'm just gonna start to come around the outer edges of my bamboo and just make little circular motions and just start to blend that around. And again, if I feel like I need to straighten up or make the hearts a little straighter here, maybe I went out of line a little bit, this is my place where I can do that. And my first layer is dry. And I'm going to do that on both sides of the heart. Just on the outer edges though. I'm going on the outer edges of the bamboo. And this is the brighter green color. So now once I go on the outside with my lighter green color, I'm gonna come just right back into my blue. I'm not gonna rinse my brush out. So I've got maybe just a little tiny bit of that color I was just working with, the brighter green color. I'm just gonna come back in on the insides and just start putting that in. So this is where it's gonna be less light hitting it. I'm gonna come all the way around, just getting those darker areas in. And where these two meet, I want there to be a nice little dark line. So anywhere I want little dark areas, I'm doing this mostly blue. Just kind of coming on down and right in between where these meet. There's gonna be a little darker blue there. On this side, everything's gonna be a little darker. And then I can take a little bit of I'm wiping a little bit of that paint off my brush. I'm just gonna come back in and just start to swirl my brush around to where those two come together, just to blend it. And right here, I need to let that area dry a little bit. You can see right here, I'm starting to get a little bit of paint lift off because it's still wet, so I'm gonna let that dry a little bit more. But I'm gonna come around and just start blending this out a little more. And while I have this dark color, I'm gonna go ahead and toward the front of my painting, I'm gonna add a little bit more of these little darker areas of grass. And here's where I can decide if I need to make this a little bit more round. And then I can come back into my yellow and just start to push that in to blend that a little more. And toward the back, it's gonna be a little lighter. And I'm gonna add a little bit of that yellow right up in the front here, just to, there we go. And then I'm gonna take some of this yellowy green color and fill this in a little bit. This is newer growth, so I think it would be a little bit greener or a little bit more yellow looking rather than green looking. So now I'm gonna decide where I want all my little rings to be. I'm gonna use yellow, mostly yellow, maybe just a hint of that blue in it, so it's still that yellow green. I'm gonna go ahead and get my white in there so it's not so transparent. And I'm gonna roll my brush around into that, bring it to a point. And I know that I have to have a little piece here where that little stalk is growing from. And then I can start to go around from there. So maybe one right about here. And it's just a slight little U shape to make it look round. And then as I move down, maybe one right about here. And then maybe one more, maybe right about here. And then we'll get into the same thing. And they grow a little differently, so I'm gonna bring, let's go ahead and complete this. So maybe one right here. Can't see that one very well. There we go. And then maybe even one right here, right before we get to that little dark piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and put one here. And then maybe one right here. And this is what really makes it look like bamboo. So let's see, maybe one right here. I'm kind of offsetting them a little bit so it gives it some interest. So not, you know, this one isn't going to be in a line with one over here. And you can do these any way you want. One here, and there you go. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few final highlights especially over on this side. So I'm going to take this same little color, maybe add just a touch more blue to it. See what this looks like. And I'm going to do a little highlight along in here. Kind of hit that little area where the paint was lifting up, and then come along in here, give it a little highlight, and blend that down. Maybe a little light is hitting up here on this side. And maybe down in here just a little bit. So wherever you feel like there may be some highlights, you can go ahead and hit. And then I'm going to come back into my blue without taking that out of my brush. So I didn't rinse my brush out, and I'm going to go back in and just straighten up any areas that I feel like might need a little straightening with that. This is more blue, so I'm going more toward the inside of my heart shape. And then I want to make sure that that line, so where these two are separated, I want to make sure that that's a known line. I can even take a little bit of that Quinacridone Magenta and bring it in. And this will start to add a little bit more interest to it. Come back up and hit some of that on the insides, because that looks really good against that green, kind of that purpley green color. And the great thing about this painting is a little bit forgiving. So when nature grows, one side may not be growing at the same rate as the other side. So if it's a little uneven, it's okay. I'm going to take this purpley green color. I'm just going to kind of hit it along the very top of my pot. That'll help even out and make it feel like there's a bit more of a rim there. And you can continue to work with this any way that you like, as far as adding any more little bands of color. I'm going to hit a little bit of this dark color down in here to settle that in a little more. This is a darker green with a little touch of purple in it. So this will be a nice painting maybe for someone that you care about, your mom, your significant other, your beloved. And I want to do a little bit more of the highlight on my little piece that's hanging out. It almost looks like maybe an arrow shooting through the heart. So I'm going to take a little bit more of this lighter green color. I'm just going to pop that in there. I'm not going to paint the whole thing in. I'm just putting little strokes in there. There you go. You can even take some of that, maybe hit it there. Hit it there. So wherever you feel like you want to add a little bit more to it, you always can. A few more of those lighter grasses in there. Put a little grass there. So I'm going to take just a little bit more of my white and my flat brush for one last little hit through here on this side. I don't want to cover up that little dark line I did. I just feel like it needs a little bit more brightness over there. Kind of work that in. And I'm going to add just a little bit of a bluer highlight on this side, so it's kind of that opposite light just hitting back here just a little bit. There we go. And that'll just even that out a little bit more. I still kept the little dark line there and just adding just a little bit there. It's always good to take a step back, especially if you're drawing off or painting off to the side a little bit, because I feel like it's feel like this is just a little bit crooked here. I'm going to take a little bit of that purple and red color and just hit it along here to try to straighten up that edge a little bit. That's looking pretty good. I think my rim got lost a little bit up here, so I'm just going to take a little bit of white and put it there. I'm not going all the way across with it. I just want to make sure it kind of has that nice round look still. And then over on this side, I can just put that little bit of highlight in there. And you can work with this any way that you want. Maybe adding a few more little highlights in. Maybe you want to add a few more of these little new growth twigs on. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight on that. So put a little bit more of a yellow there. So I'm just going around and I'm going to add a few little yellow highlights to these little parts, just so they stand out a little more. You may even hit a little bit of yellow back here so the light is hitting it. So this is just a little yellow and white back here. So you can go in and make any changes that you may want to make. You could add another little new growth. You certainly could put maybe some little leaves that are heart-shaped in here, so you can make it your own. I'm going to go ahead and sign it, and I'm going to sign it the color that's just a slight bit darker. Okay, we're done. Thank you for keeping me company today, and I hope you created something special for yourself or maybe for a special friend. Until next time, bye-bye.